Bonjour et bienvenue. Hello and welcome back to Straight Through the channel. In this video, we will learn how to use the main past tense in French, the passé composé. In your French learning journey, this is usually the first past tense you learn, and it usually poses a bit of a challenge. So let's break it down and work it out together. Let's start with the use of the tense. In a nutshell, we use the passé composé for actions that have been completed in the past. For example, j'ai regardé un film intéressant. Or, ils sont partis en vacances. Note that the passé composé can be the equivalent of different tenses in English. So, if I say j'ai mangé tout le chocolat, one could translate this as I ate all the chocolates, I have eaten all the chocolate, or I did eat all the chocolate. Either way, there's no chocolate left. Now, let's look at the structure of the passé composé, or compound past. It is called composé, or compound, because it is made of two parts. There is the verb avoir, or être, in the present tense, followed by the action word in its past participle form. In that sense, it is pretty similar to the present perfect in English. For example, I have watched is made up of to have in the present tense and the past participle of to watch. So, to build the passé composé and other compound tenses you may encounter later in your learning journey, you will need to know how to create the past participle of an action word from its infinitive. Remember, the infinitive is the dictionary version of the verb. So, for example, parler is the equivalent of to talk. You may have seen in the past that verbs have been divided into three groups in French, depending on their ending. And regular verbs usually end in either er, ir, or re. For all er verbs, including the irregular verb aller, to go, you are going to replace the er ending with a e, or e with an acute accent. In terms of pronunciation, the infinitive and past participle are therefore pronounced the exact same way. For example, parler, to talk, becomes parler, talked. Danser, to dance, becomes danser, danced. And aller, to go, becomes aller, gone. For regular ir verbs, you will simply remove the r. So choisir, to choose, becomes choisi, chosen. Finir, to finish, becomes fini, finished. And réussir, which can translate as to succeed, becomes réussi, succeeded. And finally, with regular re verbs, you will remove the re ending and replace with what may seem like a random vowel, a u. Remember, this vowel is pronounced u. So, vendre, to sell, will become vendu, sold. Attendre, to wait, becomes attendu, waited. And perdre, to lose, becomes perdu, lost. So, that's our regular verbs sorted. However, as I am sure you know, French conjugation is all about the irregular verbs. Here are some of the most common conversational ones. Fait, done, bu, drunk, pris, taken, vu, seen, dit, said, venu, come. There is a more extensive list on a cheat sheet, which you can find on my website. I'll pop the link in the description down below. Okay, so now that we know how to create a past participle, which is the second part of the passé composé, we need to focus on the first part, which we have seen is made of either the verb avoir or être in the present tense. For most verbs, we will use avoir in the present tense, followed by the past participle of the action word we are actually using. Remember, avoir in the present tense is j'ai, tu as, il, elle a, nous avons, vous avez, ils, elles ont. So if we wanted to use manger, to eat, in the passé composé, we will need to conjugate avoir in the present tense. And then figure out that manger is an ER verb. So to turn it into a past participle, we swap the ER from the infinitive for a E acute accent. This will give us j'ai mangé, tu as mangé, il, elle a mangé, nous avons mangé, vous avez mangé, ils, elles ont mangé. To use faire in the passé composé, we keep our verb avoir in the present tense and add the irregular past participle fait. J'ai fait, tu as fait, il, elle a fait, nous avons fait, vous avez fait, ils, elles ont fait. That's it. Now you have the tools to conjugate most of the verbs in the passé composé. But there are of course exceptions. There are two types of verbs with which you will have to use être in the present tense, followed by the past participle. The first type of verb is the pronominal verbs. All the verbs that have to be used with a tiny word called a reflexive pronoun. For example, s'appeler, to call oneself, se lever, to get up, or se souvenir, to remember. So, if we wanted to use the pronominal verb se lever, to get up, in the passé composé, we will have our person, followed by our little pronoun, then the verb être in the present tense, and finally the past participle of se lever, which is an ER verb, so its ending will be a E acute accent. This will give us je me suis levé, tu t'es levé, il, elle s'est levé, nous nous sommes levés, vous vous êtes levés, ils, elles se sont levés. The second type of verb to be used with être in compound tenses is a group of 17 verbs, most of which involve some kind of geographical movement. So you have aller, to go, and venir, to come, alongside verbs made up of venir, devenir, to become, and revenir, to come back. There's partir, to leave, which you can pair up with its antonyms arriver, to arrive, and rester, to stay. There's entrer, to enter, its friend rentrer, which can translate as to come back in, to return, or to come home, and the antonym of entrer, which is sortir, to go out. Then there's monter, to go up, and descendre, to come down, as well as tomber, to fall. And finally, a few more random ones. Passer, to come through, retourner, to return, and two that we rarely use, mourir, to die, and naître, to be born. You're not expected to know all of them by heart, but there are a couple of things that can help you remember. First, there's a mnemonic, which I didn't come up with, by the way, which is Dr. and Mrs. Van der Tramp. There's another way that I prefer to remember these 17 verbs. It's a very silly story that I made up, which I tell in a different video, and which my learners have found helpful. So, here we are. To use the passé composé, you have to figure out first if the verb you're using should be used with avoir or être. And second, what the past participle of the verb is. And now, you can go reminisce about the past in French. Merci et à bientôt!